In 2019, a team of scientists set out to do something nobody had ever properly done before. They didn't want to hunt for the Loch Ness Monster with cameras or sonar. They wanted to test the water itself, down to the very DNA floating in it, and settle the question once and for all. What they found didn't prove a monster exists. But it didn't fully put the mystery to rest either. And even now, the results still leave people arguing about what's actually living at the bottom of one of the deepest lakes in Britain. Loch Ness is a long, narrow stretch of water in the Scottish Highlands, and it has been at the centre of one of the world's most enduring mysteries for almost a century. The modern legend really took off in 1933, when a local hotel manager named Aldy Mackay reported seeing a large creature rolling and diving in the water near the shore. Newspapers picked up the story. Other sightings followed almost immediately, and within a year, the loch had a nickname that would stick forever: Nessie. In 1934, a now famous photograph appeared to show a long neck and small head rising from the water, and for 60 years it became the single most iconic image connected to the legend, until 1994, when one of the men involved finally admitted on his deathbed that the whole thing had been staged, using a toy submarine and a fake head made of plastic wood. That confession should have ended the story completely. It didn't. If anything, the legend only grew stronger, and Loch Ness became one of the most searched, most surveyed, and most obsessively studied bodies of water on the planet. To understand why the mystery has survived so long, it helps to understand the loch itself. Loch Ness is enormous, roughly 23 miles long, and it holds more fresh water than every lake in England and Wales combined, making it the largest body of fresh water by volume anywhere in Great Britain. At its deepest point, it plunges down about 230 metres, deep enough to comfortably hide a 15-storey building underwater with room to spare. The loch itself sits inside the Great Glen Fault, a massive crack in the Earth's crust that has existed for more than 400 million years, later carved even deeper by glaciers during the last ice age. And the water isn't clear. It's stained a deep, permanent brown by peat washed down from the surrounding hills, which means visibility drops to almost nothing just a few meters below the surface. Put those two things together, immense depth and near zero visibility, and you have the perfect natural conditions for a mystery that's almost impossible to definitively rule out, no matter how much technology you throw at it. And people have thrown a great deal of technology at it. In 1987, a coordinated operation called DeepScan brought together nearly 20 boats, all fitted with sonar equipment, sweeping across the entire loch in a single formation designed so nothing large could slip through the gaps undetected. The operation picked up a small number of unexplained sonar contacts in deep water, contacts that were never conclusively identified, but nothing resembling a large, unknown animal. Other expeditions followed over the decades, using submarines, satellite tracking, and increasingly sophisticated sonar, and every single one came back with the same basic result: no confirmed monster, but never quite a complete, satisfying answer either. Then, in 2019, came the study that actually changed how scientists talked about Loch Ness. A geneticist named Professor Neil Jamel from the University of Otago in New Zealand led an international team on a project that had nothing to do with sonar or cameras at all. Instead, they collected 250 water samples from across the loch, from the shallow edges, the open centre, and the deepest, darkest parts of the lakebed, and analysed the environmental DNA contained in every sample, tiny genetic traces that every living thing sheds constantly into its surroundings, from skin cells, waste, and scales. In total, the team processed more than 500 million individual DNA sequences. What they found was, in its own way, genuinely surprising. There was no reptile DNA anywhere in the loch. None. That alone ruled out one of the most popular monster theories: the idea that Nessie might be a surviving plesiosaur, a marine reptile that vanished from the fossil record around 66 million years ago. The team also found no shark DNA, no catfish DNA, and no evidence of sturgeon, ruling out several other long-standing theories in one clean sweep. But here's the part that genuinely startled the researchers. Eel DNA turned up in enormous quantities, at almost every single sampling location across the entire loch, from the shallows all the way down to the deepest water. Eels are already known to live in Loch Ness in large numbers, but the sheer volume and consistency of the DNA left Gemma and his team unable to rule out something stranger: the possibility that some of these eels could be growing to a genuinely unusual, outsized length. Professor Gemma himself said publicly that, based on the data his team collected, giant eels remained a plausible explanation for at least some of what people have reported seeing over the decades. It wasn't proof of anything supernatural, but it also wasn't the clean, boring, null result everyone expected either. The loch, according to actual hard genetic data, was absolutely teeming with something the study couldn't fully explain the true scale of. It's worth being fair to the skeptical side of this story too, because a huge number of reported sightings almost certainly have far more ordinary explanations. Loch Ness sits in a long, narrow valley exposed to sudden gusts of wind, which can create what scientists call a seiche, a standing wave that rocks back and forth across the surface long after the wind has died down, sometimes producing humps and wakes that look, from a distance, exactly like something swimming just beneath the surface. Floating logs, disturbed by the loch's unusually cold, oxygen-poor deep water, occasionally rise unexpectedly from the bottom after decades submerged. Otters, diving birds, and boat wakes account for a significant share of reported sightings too, according to researchers who've spent years reviewing witness photographs and video. None of that fully explains everything people have reported over 90 years, but it's a useful reminder that not every unexplained shape in the water needs a dramatic answer. The genuinely puzzling cases are the ones science hasn't managed to explain away quite so easily, and those are the ones that keep researchers coming back. The mystery deepened again in August 2023, during what organisers called the largest coordinated search of Loch Ness in 50 years. Around 200 volunteers gathered around the loch over a single weekend, working with modern equipment that simply didn't exist during earlier searches: thermal imaging drones scanning the surface from above, sonar mapping the lakebed in real time, and hydrophones, sensitive underwater, microphones capable of picking up sound from deep beneath the surface. Most of the weekend passed without major incident. Then, while testing their hydrophone equipment near Urquhart Bay, one of the deepest and most frequently reported parts of the loch, the search team picked up 4 distinct, loud noises coming from somewhere in the water. Nobody could immediately identify the source. The moment wasn't caught on video, and to this day, organisers have been careful and honest about what they actually found, stating plainly that they can't say it was Nessie, only that the sounds remain genuinely unexplained, and the story hasn't slowed down since. Official sighting records tracked by dedicated Loch Ness Monster registries since the 1990s show the pattern is, if anything, accelerating. Every year, tourists, locals and researchers continue reporting unexplained shapes and movements in the water. In 2025, 10 sightings were logged over the course of the entire year. By the middle of 2026, that number had already been matched and then surpassed, with reports coming from visitors as far away as the United States and Australia, including a young girl who spotted a dark shape roughly 6 feet long near the shore, and a tourist who described what looked like a pale, triangular fin breaking the surface. None of these sightings come with hard proof, but taken together with the unexplained hydrophone recordings from 2023 and the sheer, unaccounted-for scale of eel DNA found in 2019, it's easy to understand why so many people, scientists included, still hesitate to say the mystery is fully closed. So what did science actually find at Loch Ness? Not a monster, at least not in the way the legend describes it. The DNA evidence firmly rules out a surviving prehistoric reptile, a giant fish, or anything resembling a shark or sturgeon. What the data does support is something almost as strange in its own quiet way: a deep, cold, nearly invisible lake that may be home to eels growing far larger than anyone expected, hiding inside a body of water so vast and so dark that even 500 million genetic sequences in a 50-year search effort couldn't account for every noise, every shape, and every shadow beneath the surface. Maybe that's the real reason Loch Ness still shocks people, more than 90 years after the legend began, not because science proved a monster is real, but because even now, with every modern tool available, science still can't say with total certainty that something extraordinary isn't down there. Every serious study, from the sonar sweeps of the 1980s to the genetic sequencing of 2019 to the hydrophones of 2023, has chipped away a little more of the legend without ever fully finishing the job. Each one ruled something out, a reptile, a shark, a hoax, and each one, almost accidentally, left something new and unexplained sitting in its place. That's arguably the most honest way to describe Loch Ness today. Not a monster's home, and not a solved mystery either, but somewhere firmly in between, still quietly keeping at least part of its secret.